What is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for checking out the Before the Snap podcast. I'm your host, Nick Mazesco. This is episode number 1, and I had some big plans for this, and I'll get into in just a second about what the format's going to be, but I want to preface this episode with, this is a weird one, and I think it's appropriate with where our world is right now that we start things off sort of on a more unconventional note. In general, my idea for this podcast, why I wanted to do it was just because I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, if you've talked to me in person, if you've seen me on various shows, I'm a pretty loud out there person. And as somebody who has gotten the unique opportunity over the last, since last January, to be a part of this community and to really come at it from fresh eyes. I didn't grow up playing Madden, especially in the online world. I did get a chance to play some offline games later in life. I think my first Madden was 06. But being able to come at this from a different place, from the franchise side, from really learning this community and getting to know this community for the first time last January, and being a part of it for the last year and change, I feel like I've just got a unique perspective, and I see great guys doing podcasts out there, Dubby each and every week. The OG network putting out their podcast. So many of you guys, whether you guys are on streams or whether you guys are doing podcasts, do such a great job that I just wanted to really chime in, and give you guys my perspective. So the general format of this podcast from here moving forward, and I want you to take this episode and just sort of set it to the side for a second, because this episode's a weird one. But in general, what I want to do is highlight what's going on in the Madden world, events that happened in the past week. Friday Night Football is something I'm part of, and I want to highlight that because I think there's some unique storylines coming in there, especially as we start winding down the competitive season and head into Madden 21. Maybe talk about some of the big topics. Each and every week, it seems like Madden community has something new that they're talking about, and I want to be able to chime in on that. I do want to bring some guests on. I want to talk to some people that, are in the community and get different perspectives, get to know these guys a little better, put some faces to names that maybe you only know on Twitter, or maybe you only see a couple times streaming. I want to really dig deep on those guys, and then you see that final one there. I want to highlight streamers each and every week. I think the Madden community, especially the streaming community, has grown a lot this year in terms of number of people grinding, in terms of viewership. I think it's interesting watching how the Madden streaming community has grown and become something of its own, and I want to highlight streamers each and every week and give you guys names you should check out. So that's the general format, and right now, I had a lot of people ask me, do I want this to be a live show, a lot like what Dubby does? And for the moment, the answer is no. And the short and simple reason that looks a lot different than when I'm recording this at 1:20 in the morning on now March 13th. Just my travel schedule is so unpredictable, and I want this to be a consistent thing. And so the ability to pre-record it, especially if I know travel is coming up, the ability to record things ahead of time and either have interviews in the can or have episodes recorded earlier in the week than on Thursday and Friday, that provides some flexibility and allows me to be consistent. That doesn't mean there won't be live shows. I do want to do live shows, especially for big events, for special shows, and we may move to a pure live format. But for the second, I want it to be, it's going to be here on YouTube, youtube.com/Madden Bomber League. If for some reason you're not on YouTube, there's where it's going to be for the moment. It may get its own channel at some point, but for now, I'm just posting it on our league's page. And then as well, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening to it. I want to provide a podcast that you guys can download and listen to in the car or while you're working out or something like that. So that's the short, as we're already 5 minutes in and I'm rambling about format, which I'm sure you guys wanted to hear about. But that's the short story. So now, this is episode 1. March 13th, 2020, and now we can take that episode that we set aside and we're going to put it right in front of us because a lot of the reason why, and quick note on format in general, I'm looking to record these on Fridays, mostly because that's when the Friday Night Football brackets come out, and so we can do a little more deep dive analysis on that, look at some interesting matchups upcoming, and give you something at the end of the week. But I debated whether or not to record this, especially with the news about the COVID-19, the coronavirus, and how it's taking the world by storm. And there was a thought of, do I wait because we have a lot of uncertainty, because we don't know what's going on, because we don't know how the Madden community is going to be affected. And when I put out a tweet earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, I said I had some strong feelings on it that I wanted to get out. And everything that's happened over the last, 72 hours has, I don't want to say changed how I felt, but it has certainly put things in a new light. In the last 36 hours, we've seen every major sport in the United States postpone or cancel their seasons. The NBA and the NHL are both on a postponement. The NBA said 30 days is what we're looking at. The NHL a little less time framey, but is going to continue to monitor the situation. We saw one of my favorite events of the year and something that I had travel planned for, the NCAA tournament, canceled, not postponed, completely canceled. We have seen colleges across the country not only canceling classes, but telling students to, if they can get off campus, stay off campus. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've seen, announcements of travel bans to Europe. Our economy has moved from an 11-year bull market to a bear market, which you can find all about on my other podcast, Bulls and Bears, the financial markets podcast. And all this goes to seeing how this worldwide, what has been now determined to be a worldwide pandemic, has affected the world. And last week, talking with a lot of friends, if you've talked to me last week, I was very much on the live your normal lives train, and to a point, I'm still in there. I'm not an alarmist. I think the reason why a lot of people are so fearful of this is because it's new, and because it's it is a worldwide event that we're sort of watching happen in real time. And so last week I was very much on the coronavirus, not to downplay its effect, but, we're still getting numbers. South Korea, is reporting out of the number of cases they've tested for, which they have a much wider range testing than we do in the United States right now. Their mortality rate's around 0.6%, which is still 5 or 6 times higher than the common influenza A. You're seeing in other places, Italy, it's much higher. I think they're in the 4.5-5% range. And we're still trying to learn about this disease. We're still trying to see more tests, more data come in. And as more data comes in, it becomes less about the fear of the unknown, and more about preparedness and where we go from here. And I think, as always, as we are as human beings, when we have information, we can deal with it more effectively. But, I was one sitting there last week, like a lot of people, going, I don't know why we're freaking out about this. And to a point, I'm still in that area. As a 30-year-old, relatively healthy individual, it doesn't scare me that much, because all the data, 80% of people are going to have what is considered mild symptoms. Only 15% are going to require hospitalization. Only 5% are going to require intensive care beyond that. And you're looking at, death tolls as they start rising. The majority of these people are at-risk groups. They're the elderly, they're the already ill, pre-existing conditions, things like that. And I don't fall into any of those, and neither do a lot of my friends. And so I was initially very much in that, why are we panicking over this? But, over the last week, as most of you, if you're listening to Madden podcast, you probably are a sports fan. We saw Rudy Gobert test positive for the coronavirus. The NBA, postponed the season within 6 minutes of that announcement. Adam Silver, within 6 minutes of the confirmed diagnosis, said the season's done. And that, I think, was the moment when we all went, okay, this is how the ball is going to get rolling. At that point, the NCAA had said that they were going to play the NCAA tournament without fans. And as I had said, I had trip planned. I was going to go out to Vegas for the NCAA tournament for that first weekend. And when the NBA canceled their season or postponed it, I texted my friend who I'm going with. Shout out to Rico Williams. I said, there's no way that the NCAA tournament's happening. There's no way that the professionals are going to be able to avoid playing and avoid, the close contact with possible people who have it. And they're going to let amateurs go out there. And sure enough, it happened. Within the last 12 hours today, the NCAA not only didn't postpone it, they canceled it. They canceled all spring sports. And so I think this is a moment, and again, this is a weird episode for me, not only being the first one, but in this time, sort of, I don't know. There are a lot of times when I was thinking about this podcast, I went, I'm going to have clear plans for every episode. And this was one I didn't really have because I really want to get my thoughts out there. I want to hear your thoughts, YouTube comments, ratings on iTunes and Spotify always help podcasts grow and comments on there. And you see the social media at MBL Network. You can find me on Twitter. Yeah, that's a great place. At me on Twitter. Give me your thoughts. But I think this was the week that I don't want to say I realized it was serious, but I think the gravity of the situation became clearer, and I think it was less. It became less about I'm not scared of this, so why should other people be scared of it? It became more about I understand the threat of a pandemic. I understand the threat to many at-risk people, and it was this week that I went, okay, this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with, if say I get it, and then I go to the grocery store and I, come in contact with, a grandmother and she can't fight off the infection, at that point I'm responsible, and could I live with that? And so, I think it's important. I think there are a couple things that are important. And we'll get to the impact on on Madden in a moment, but I think there are a couple things that are important. I think first of all, trusting those that are smarter than us is important, and it is something that I try to do as much as possible. Is there are a lot of people out there who are studying the stats and trying to find vaccines and cures and giving us this information. I think it's important in this time. I think we're in general a untrusting society. I'm a cynic. I'm in general very distrusting. But this is a moment where I think we need to trust those who are smarter than us. And I think life's going to be uncomfortable for a while. But the biggest thing, and I said it on Facebook, and I think the biggest thing is to realize though that we are going to come out of this. The resiliency of our world, of our country, of our people, it is some of the best parts of living in the world that we do today. And, I remember being a relatively young child on 9/11, and there were a lot of people going, are we going to get out of this? What is happening? And on that day, there were a lot of people, in the same situation, not knowing what's going on. And we came out of it. In no way was it easy. In no way were all the decisions right or wrong. But I think the biggest thing for everybody out there who's listening to this is, make sure you keep remembering that. I'm a big proponent of mental health and making sure that you take care of yourself, not just physically, but, mentally. And I think that's just, not to get too preachy, but that's a big part of it is, check in with your friends and continue to talk with them. The great part of our technological society is we can. This isn't 1800 when there's, rampaging disease. The only way you get in contact with somebody is, sending a letter, or I guess in that time it would be a letter via horse courier. take care of yourselves and make sure that you're not only doing the obvious things that people are saying, washing your hands and avoiding close contact with people for the time being, but at this time take things seriously, because at the end of the day, they were talking about how cases are dropping in China, in South Korea, and in Singapore. And the biggest thing is because people are listening, and people are, not necessarily quarantining, not locking yourself in a room and going, I'm not leaving. But, if you're sick, you're staying home, you're staying away from people. And if you're not, you're still doing a lot of these things. You don't have to shut down your lives, but, avoiding those situations, because there are many. The reason why this is so transmittable is because so many people have little to no symptoms, and because of that, they continue to live their daily lives. I say the flu is in theory less transmittable because when you have the flu, you don't leave your house. You want to lay in bed. But there are a lot of people who catch, the COVID-19 virus and, go out and live their lives. Donovan Mitchell said he felt fine and he tested positive. So I think that's just, and again, I get nobody wants to listen to a podcast of somebody who is not a doctor nor an expert in any field talking at them about a worldwide pandemic, but I felt like I had to get that out there, and just say we'll be okay, and I think that's important, and that brings us to where we're going with the good news, and more to the Madden centric part of this particular podcast. The great part about this, about being in the Madden community, is the fact that as people who love the game as a whole, and I say that as a whole because I know everyone on Twitter and on YouTube is going to go, well, I hate this game, or I hate, this part about it, or, I haven't touched it in a while. The great part about this, though, as people who love playing the game of Madden, is the fact that, we are getting some extra time. Not just play Madden, but spend time with our families. Literally, it's 1:35 in the morning here on March 13th, and 2 hours ago, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, announced that all schools would be closed for 3 weeks. My wife is a teacher, and so, of course, we wish she was at work because that would mean things are going well. But, I can't say I feel a little fortunate because we get some extra time. It's basically extended spring break, some time at home, and while we're not going to be able to do what we would normally do over spring break, which would be traveling and visiting with friends and things like that, we're still going to, get to spend some time together. And as Madden players, we get some extra time to play some games. And whether your opinion of the game is positive or negative, we live in a world where, because we are gamers, because we play these games online, we still get to stay connected to that community that is most important to us. The Madden community is very strong. You see so many friendships forged through this game. For those of you who don't know, if you're just checking this out for the first time, I'm a member of a 32 man franchise mode. Hence why we're on the Madden Bomber League YouTube for the moment, and MBL Network's all my handles, because I joined this league 4 years ago at this point. I'm just looking for some guys to play Madden with, as somebody who never played online Madden. And out of that, I've gotten a family from it. I've gotten guys who we have vacations planned. And at the moment, we're still planning on going on because they're this summer, and we have no intention on skipping out on such an important thing for us. And hopefully we'll still be able to do that. But no, we had 20 guys down in Virginia Beach, of which I think I had met 5 in person beforehand. I'm getting to meet all these people in person. I've gotten to know all these professional players in the Madden community, who I not only get to call colleagues, but friends, guys who I talk to on Twitter every day, guys who, when I see them at events, we get to hang out and get to know. I mean, I walk away from every event that I've gotten to do in San Francisco with EA, and I always spend a minute after the event going, who did I get to know a little better this time? And it's usually 2 or 3 people that I went, man, I didn't really know this guy, and I got to hang out with them. And so I think that's if you're looking for a silver lining in what has been a craptastic crap storm over the last 72 to 96 to 2 weeks, it's the fact that we are getting some extra time. And I think that's important is, while we're doing this, if you're a streamer, keep streaming. I told my guys in the NBL, we're going to be running broadcast every 2 days, every week. And hasn't been something I've been able to do because I've been traveling a lot for work and doing stuff with EA and, going down to DreamHack and doing all these events. I haven't gotten to do as much with the NBL that I have in the past. In the past, I always prided ourselves on, we'd have 14 weeks of broadcast for the playoffs, but last season I think we ended up with only 6 or 7 broadcasts for the entire season. We did a lot of games in a lot of 2-hour broadcasts where we were packing 5 games in, but we didn't get to do quite the frequency that I wanted to. And, this is a small bright spot, is that I'm going to get to do that. And I told them, I said, we're going to do this as much as we can for as long as we can, because there are going to be a lot of people at home who aren't used to being at home, people who aren't able to go to their jobs, people who aren't able to go on travel plans. And they're going to be sitting there looking for something to watch and looking for something to distract themselves from the outside world. And I think that's where us as a community, as a streaming community, a gaming community, a Madden community, can really fill in the gaps. And I think that's a really unique opportunity. And I think that's, it is a silver lining. It maybe is trying to, find the needle in the haystack of what the positive thing is. But, I implore guys, and if you haven't streamed before, this is a great time to do that. And, even if you're not interested in streaming, this is a great time to do some of those things that maybe you thought you didn't have time for before. I've seen stories on Twitter of all these guys like, I finally got to finish up this project I've been working on, or I finally got to, even things as little as, clean the house. I think this is a unique opportunity where, because I think we're going to have a lot of things canceled and a lot of people are going to be staying at home for the majority of the time, to make sure that, we nip this outbreak in the bud. This is a unique opportunity to really, turn a negative into a positive. And so I'm excited to see what people do, because I think there are going to be a lot of great streams out there. And I think there's going to be a lot of, a lot of time on people's hands to just check new things out. And, of course, I always hope you check our streams out over on Twitch. But, I always say, support the Madden streaming community. There's so many great guys out there streaming. The big names, the Problems, the W's, the Clefs, who, all those guys I love watching. But, guys like Boogs and One Great User and Civil and BG and Chaos and K-Mac, and I could go on and on of all these guys streaming on Twitch and putting things out on YouTube. T. Davis, who I am loving watching grow as a streamer and a broadcaster. Zan, so many names that, again, I apologize if I didn't call you out. There's just so many guys to talk about that. I think this is a great opportunity to check some guys out that maybe you didn't have a chance to do before. And hit that sub button. I know everybody's financial situation is differently, especially with, now a lot of people missing out on work and missing out on watching the stock market go down, things like that, wherever you stand. But, if you have the opportunity just to give that $4.99 a month to one of those streamers, this is a great opportunity because I think a lot of these streamers are going through the same thing that you are. And maybe streaming is their main source of income. Maybe this is a source of income that's going to help supplement them through this time. And so if you have the ability, again, never, I will never advocate giving if you don't have the ability, and everyone's in a different situation. But if you do have that ability to give that $5 a month and support these guys financially, I think this is a great opportunity to do that and show some love and help these guys through what we're all going through is a tough time. And so I wanted to address, and I want to preface this with, I have no information. This is all speculatory things I've heard as news, but a lot of people asking what's the plan. I saw people tweeting at DreamHack, what's going on? I'm trying to book flights and things like that. Let me start with the one on the left, T. Davis's event. They've already announced that Time Esports has already announced they're canceling all events, and I think it is safe to assume that for the foreseeable future, and what is that time frame? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but the time frame I at least go with is, the 30-day time frame the NBA goes with takes us to April 13th, or April 12th, depending on how my math is. And I think, expecting anything to happen within those 30 days is probably expecting a lot. Major League Baseball has delayed the start, NBA, NHL, everybody's canceling things. I expect, as a random thing, as a wrestling fan, I bet you WrestleMania is going to get canceled. I even though Vince McMahon, I'm sure, is trying to fight it with all his will, I bet you it's going to get canceled because Tampa will not let 70,000 people descend upon Tampa. But then I think the thing is, the Madden Bowl is a week and a half after that. DreamHack's at the end of May. What's going on with those? And again, I have no information. I have not been given any information yet because those discussions are still happening behind closed doors. But I think the important thing to remember is whether or not these events happen, these decisions are tough. If these events get canceled, I mean, you talk about, thousands of dollars out the window of sponsorship and thousands of dollars of income, especially you look at DreamHack. That's a major festival. If for some reason that doesn't happen by the end of May, that's a major festival that brings income to the city of Dallas and to the organizers that they've been planning for months and months that can't go on. If the Madden Bowl can't go on, these are productions that we as a broadcasting team have been talking about since all the way back in the Classic in August and have lots of great things planned. But if they can't go on, I think the important thing to do is to make sure to not, and there's going to be frustration. I never want to tell anybody how to feel or how not to feel, but, to not take it out on those guys because, I was watching the SEC commissioner talk about, canceling the SEC tournament. This was before the NCAA tournament got officially pulled, but canceling the SEC tournament. And he said he took over the SEC 4 years ago, and this is the first decision he's ever had to make that got him truly emotional because he understands the impact of that and how much people count on it. And no, trust me, I'm counting on these things too. This is my livelihood. As events get canceled and, as anybody who's in the entertainment industry who's, paid by contract and are paid by event, as events get canceled, every single one of those guys emceeing or hosting events or being commentators, they don't get paid for that. And that's a big deal. But, I think the biggest thing is to remember that this is an incredibly tough situation, an incredibly tough decision, and to not take it out on those making those decisions because the decisions that they're making is to protect the health and safety of everybody. It's not just the players, it's the crews, it's the audiences, it's the patrons, it's whoever it is. So I certainly hope these things happen. And as always, positive thoughts going out there that we find a way to make them happen. But it's hard to sit here and have that super positive outlook when you've watched, major sports getting canceled. And sports are a major distraction for me. They're a major part of what I love watching sports. Every sport, I'll watch a basket weaving competition if it's exciting. And so, we certainly do hope that they happen, but, if they're not able to happen, know that, again, we will come through this and we will be able to do things like have these events in the future, and that's important to remember. And so, again, I have no information. I wish I did, but I think it's just I think that's important is that, not to take it out on the event organizers because they're doing the best they can. And, again, if especially for DreamHack in May, that is such a long time frame out in terms of this entire crisis that there's no way to know whether or not we'll be out of the woods by then. We'll be able to start, traveling and getting people together. But I had a lot of people asking on Twitter, should I be booking my flights right now? And I think the short answer is yes, only because I've seen as somebody who travels a lot, every airline that I've looked at, I believe right now has no change fees. So, at least for the moment, for a while. So, if you have the money to book it, you can book it and then change your plans and not get charged a fee for moving those flights or canceling those flights, getting a full credit for it. I mean, if you can't, you can't. Again, flight prices are going to be low for a while, guys. The travel industry is going to be begging for people to come back when we're able to travel again because, you're listening to airlines cutting 20, 30, 40% of all routes. So, I would not be worried about paying for a last minute ticket if DreamHack is able to happen, because I think flight prices are still going to be relatively low at that time, and they will be for a while. That's just my speculation, but I would not be worried about booking or not booking is I think the completely spineless and non-answer to that one is if you have the money to book it and you want to make sure you have that flight, book it now and know that you have flexibility with it, because all these airlines are giving you that flexibility because of this crisis. If you're not comfortable booking it, don't book it. But we probably won't know about DreamHack for at least another month, I would guess, and probably a little more than that. So it'll be interesting to see. And you know, this comes as we're just past the half-hour mark, right about where I wanted, where I want this podcast to be, about a half hour or so. Two things that I want to do at the end of every show. Friday Night Football, I want to spotlight it. The reason why I usually, as I said earlier, want to record it on Fridays is because we'll have the brackets out. It is 1:48 in the morning, and I'm sure Rockets is tucked in bed. So we don't have the brackets, and I would feel weird like starting to break down matchups just because of the tone of this podcast. I feel like has been a little sour, and with good reason, but hopefully in future broadcasts we'll be able to be a little more upbeat about what's going on in the Madden community. But make sure you check out Friday Night Football. It's each and every Friday starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time over on twitch.tv/MudheadTV. 32 players, $1,000 tournament. And, you know, I did talk to Rockets earlier this week, and I went, you know, what's going on with Mudhead? And he said, we're going to keep putting it on as long as we can. And that's the great part about Friday Night Football, because it's a fully remote tournament. And because we've been able to be working remote the last 2 months, we've unwittingly been prepared for this sort of crisis. So Friday Night Football will go on as long as we can. And it's going to be a great opportunity to check out some Madden action each and every Friday as we're in this sort of, you know, weird time. So make sure you check that out. And as always, I want to spotlight a streamer. And this week I feel like it's appropriate not to spotlight one, but just to spotlight them all. Go on Twitch and just type into the search bar Madden NFL 20 and follow all those guys. This is an opportunity while people aren't going to work, while, you know, a lot of people are working from home, to find some new streamers you like. Tune in to, I mentioned a lot of those names. Tune in and just give them, you know, 25 minutes of your time. Just listen to them play, see if you like them. Hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button if you can. But help grow the streaming community, because I think this is a time where the streaming community can be very strong while people don't have ESPN to turn on to check out basketball games or hockey games or things like that. You know, people are going to be turning to new avenues. And I think this is a time that, you know, we can support each other as streamers, and as a community. And so I that's sort of what I got. I know it was weird. It was a little rambly at times, and I promise that episode 2 and beyond will not be nearly as somber and weirdly stream of conscious. But I wanted to get this episode out. I hope you guys enjoyed it, or at least found some useful information in it. As always, check out the Madden Bomber League on Twitch at MBL, twitch.tv/MBL Network. That's where all of our broadcasts are. We have MBL Live, which is our flagship show. That's, you know, myself and my broadcasting partner, Bomber. We do franchise games. It's not us playing. We get to call the games of other guys in our league. So it's a true sports field broadcast. So this time when there's no sports, come check us out. We actually have an NBA Live coming up tonight, which is Friday the 13th. Awesome, super lucky day. Love it. Yeah, check us out. I believe it's at 8 o'clock Eastern time. But as always, follow me on Twitter at MBL Network. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What are you guys doing during this time at home? What are you hoping to do? Are there things that you guys are looking at? I'd love to hear what your guys' ideas are. And let me know your guys' favorite streamers. You know, I know a lot of the big names, but there are a lot of smaller streamers that are doing some great things. So hit me up on Twitter at MBL Network. Comment right here on the YouTube channel. This should be up. I'm literally recording this, and I'm going to submit it to Spotify and YouTube and iTunes and all them. It should be up in the next couple days on there, so give it a listen. Make sure you rate it. Take a second just to rate the podcast, and hopefully it's a good rating. I'm just saying, just for my sake, hopefully it's a good rating. Look for a new podcast coming out next Friday. That's the 20th of 2020. And we're hopefully going to have some Madden to talk about. Some Friday Night Football, some results from that, and the big topics in the Madden community. So thank you for tuning in to the Before the Snap podcast. I am Nick Mazeska one more time. Be safe and be healthy to everybody out there. You know, keep on keep on trucking, guys. We're going to get through this, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. Shout out to everybody out there who tuned in, and much love to the Madden community. I'll see you next week.